with Felicity Collins. Hi, Felicity.
Hi.
So Felicity, I've got to get my facts straight here because I don't want to get confused with all the different levels and things and stuff going on. So Felicity and I have been working together for probably about 18 months. No, maybe even 2 years now, actually, I reckon. Probably not.
Yeah,
far.
I think it would be.
Yeah. And in that time and beyond that, so Felicity's been in the European Championships for eventing for a few years now. So 18 years was her first year as a junior. That was in 2016. In 2017, she was a young rider. She was 19. And then last year, it was actually her last year in Young Riders because this year it hasn't happened, has it? So that was team gold, though. So way to finish. Hey, Felicity, go out with a bang.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. Having previously won 2 team bronze, which was amazing. My first championship, obviously, it was just I've been trying to get to a championship probably for about 4 years, and then finally being there, I think I completely sort of forgot about the prospects of medals. So then when I won team bronze there, I was so excited, like, to win a medal. Like, oh my god, I can't believe I actually won a medal. And then Mill Street 2017, first year in Young Riders. So again, wasn't necessarily expecting a medal. So again, that was amazing to win a young rider medal. But then you sort of get to, a bit further down the line, you start expecting a bit more. And then by the time we got into, we got to Marsbargen last year, and it was my last year in Young Riders. The expectation was to try and come out on top. And so that was amazing to win team gold there. And yeah, and the way it happened was really exciting as well. So it was just like a dream week.
So tell us a little bit more then about the way that happened, and then we're going to get onto some other bits as well, but you can't leave us hanging on that one.
I know. So basically we all jumped our individual rounds. I think we were lying in team silver, and we were a fair way behind the French, and the French are very good, and we thought were on really good jumping horses. So we just tried to keep the margins as close as possible and jump as many clear rounds as we could, and we did that, but they were still quite a way ahead. And then I think one of their team members had 2 down, another one had 1 down, and then it came to the last rider. She was actually in individual gold as well, so she was in individual gold and team gold, and she had to have 3 fences down for us to win team gold, and we were just like, it's just not going to happen. And then she jumped the first fence, and then she had the second fence down, and we all just went, oh. And then she had the 3rd fence down, and then we went, oh my god. And then we let her carry on round, and she was just started jumping clear again. And so I was stood there like, oh my god, this is so close. But and I'd actually, admittedly, I had a rail down myself, so I was at the point where I knew if she didn't have another rail down, it would have been my pole that would have cost us the gold medal for the team. So the emotions that were running through my head at that point were just crazy. And then she came into the last combination, which was the treble, and she jumped in, and then it just went straight through the second part of the treble. And we all just went, I've never been hugged so tightly in my life. Everyone just like jumped on each other, but we were still silent because she still had to jump on the fence. But it was like this silent, like, hugging, and it was amazing. And I just cried for about an hour. So so it was just, that's probably one of the best moments of my career so far. Even though it wasn't an individual medal for me, it was just incredible. And it also meant, obviously really sad for her, but it also meant that our British teammates actually won their 2 individual medals off that last pole as well that she had. So that one pole gave us 1 gold, 1 silver, and 1 bronze. So
wow, and that's awesome. And it really can be that close in eventing, can't it? It can literally be a pole between you all.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why it's so hard to get it right in this sport. But when it does go right, it's even more amazing.
So tell us a little bit about then how you've come to be eventing at that level at the grand age of, you're 21 now, aren't you?
I'm 22 now. I'm getting old.
Sorry.
I know. Last year.
Oh my word. That's gone fast.
I know. 1 minute I was a teenager, and yeah, now I'm a senior now. I'm not even a young rider. So
yeah. So last year was your. Go on.
The only classes that I can do now that are youth classes are under 25, so I'm hanging on to that.
yeah. So, and last year was your first sort of proper year as a senior, really, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I sort of had a bit of a transition, like alongside young riders. Obviously, I was doing all the under-21 trials, but I was also trying to get qualifications for 5-star and step a lot of horses up. So, I mean, I have been competing in senior classes, since I was like 15. But last year was kind of beginning to really rub up against the shoulders of the big boys, and that would have helped me for this year if we'd had any events, but we hadn't. And I actually did get on my first senior team as well last year, which was a Nations Cup team out in Belgium. And so that was an amazing experience as well, to ride on the senior team for the first time.
So that's incredible. Okay, so I did interrupt you when I was saying to you, tell us about your history. How have you gotten to be where you are now at the age of 22?
Yeah. So I started eventing with BE when I was 13, so my 13th year. So you can start when you're 12, but I didn't have the right pony. I had naughty, nappy, tricky ponies. So I missed a year, which I was very upset about because I thought it was going to be the end of the world. So started with 2 ponies in 2011, and they hadn't done eventing before, BE before, so took them from our first BE 90s and finished the season with, I think, a couple of novices each and some really good results. And so that was my first year eventing. And then my next year, 2014, I started doing pony trials, did them for 2014, 2015, 2012, 2013, 2014, sorry. And then moved on to juniors. Actually had a bit of an overlap in 2014, and campaign and junior trials with a horse that I was producing as well. And then went through the juniors and the young riders. So that's sort of, my BE history. But the reason I do event is because my mum did it, and I just was brought up around it. Like, I remember being probably 2 or 3 and like being underneath a horse that my mum had just taken cross country and claying its legs. I was just always really involved. And like, when I was a baby, my mum used to have me in the front of the lorry, like in a carry car seat, and like just take me along to events. So I've literally just grown up around it.
And so I know you've grown up around it, so you probably don't know anything else, but it always fascinates me. And the question I always ask people is, so why do you do it? What's it all about for you?
Well, when I was younger, I didn't necessarily want to be an event rider. I always knew I wanted to do something with horses. I think, when you're a kid and you have those things, I think at one point I was obsessed. I had to be a hairdresser. That was at one point. I think I was like 5 or 6 then. And then when I was sort of 8 or 9 onwards, I actually really wanted to be a vet. And I wanted to do that until I was about 15. And just before my GCSEs, I started sort of getting a lot more serious in the eventing. And that's when I realised that's what I really wanted to do. And I was one of those sort of cliche people who I did used to lie in bed at night and honestly just fantasize and dream about jumping the last fence of a 3-day and coming through the finish, having won a medal, having known that I'd won or done well. Like that feeling is just like euphoric, and that's sort of what I chase, and that's why I do it.
And so you say you chased that. So tell me about the first time that you actually experienced that then. Where were you and what was it when you went, oh, wow, the dream, it's happened. That's incredible.
Yeah. So I know I can pinpoint exactly that moment. And that was at my first European Championship in Italy in 2016. And I can't remember if I was when I was to jump, but anyway, it was the show jumping. I jumped clear inside the time cross country the day before. I was a 7-year-old, didn't really know what I was going to get on the last day. Knew that the margins were really, really tight that year, and knew I had to jump clear to sort of be in with a shot of keeping the team medal. And so jumping the last fence and knowing that I jumped clear, finished on my dressage score, like that's all I had wanted to do for so many years. And to do it with that horse as well, it just meant everything to me. And I have a photo of it. I have a photo of that moment, and I have it in a frame. It's my favorite photo because it just encapsulates everything that I worked towards to that point.
Okay, cool. So having worked towards that and achieved that, then what is it then that made you carry on? Why didn't you stop at that point and go, oh yeah, I've done it, thanks very much, dream tick? Because most people don't even get to that, do they? Let alone go tick, oh, next.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where the youth programs are really helpful, because there's so much structure around it, and it was just a natural progression. So that was my last year in juniors, and then I knew, oh, next year I'm in young riders, so I want to be able to go get on the young rider team. I want to be able to do that again, and do it even better. So that's sort of what made me think, yeah, I want that feeling again. And then I was lucky enough to have a pretty similar experience in Mill Street for the 2017, for my first young riders, and the same thing, clear inside the time cross country, knew that I had to jump a clear round, and the same feeling, jumped the last fence, and he was being really difficult in that show jumping round as well, and I thought, oh, I'm not going to get this time, and I just about squeezed it and got him over the last fence clear. And it was so, that was a bit of an out of the body experience. I actually don't remember that one as well as I do the first one. I don't know why. I think I was more nervous for the second one than I was the first one, because I was like, oh, was the first one a fluke, and is it going to be the same? So that was a bit strange, but I remember just, my God, like, yeah, the relief and the joy. So that was amazing. And then obviously won the under 21s in that year as well. So there's always something to work towards, and it's always different. It's not necessarily jumping the last fence of a championship, like I'm describing. It can be, coming through the finish on a young horse, doing their first 90. Like, I've had really similar feelings just doing something like that. So there's always little mini goals along the way, and with different horses it differs completely. I could be thrilled to have one down with one horse doing something as just as much as I could be, winning a medal with another.
So what do you think's behind that for you then, that means that you're just as happy with that as you are with something bigger on another horse? So what does that mean it's about for you then, really? Because it's obviously not about winning medals, is it? Like, that's a bonus.
Yeah, I think it's just keeping perspective, and it is just obviously a love of the horses and a want to get the best out of each horse. And I've been brought up riding quite a few different horses. I've been lucky to ride some really lovely horses and also some trickier ones, and I've just always been taught by my mum to just get the best out of each horse. And I know that I'm not going to ride, if I've got 10 horses to ride, not everyone's going to be a world beater, but it can still be just as rewarding. And that's just that's why I do it, because I love the horses, and I love just being able to think, yeah, that was the best for them on that day, and you can't do any better than that. So yeah.
So I know one question that a lot of people ask, and hopefully we're now distilling this myth a little bit, is that at the top level you don't get nervous. Now, at the age you're at, you've got to 5-star. You did qualify 5-star. That would have been the plan this year, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, I know what the answer is to this, but what's your thought on nerves and how you handle it then, especially when you're under pressure, like at a European Championships as a young rider? What do you do? What are your thoughts on nerves?
So yes, as you know, I struggle pretty badly with my nerves, and I always have done. Not really sure why. I think it's just one of those things. I'm quite an intense person, I think. When I want something, I really want it, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. I'm really lucky that I've always grown up with, although my mum's done it herself, she's never ever put pressure on me. She would never say, oh, why did you have that pole down? She's completely supportive in that way. So I think people then find it a bit strange, like, oh, why are you nervous? It's not like anyone's going to have a go at you if you don't do well. But it's it's no one else but me. Like, if I don't feel like I've done well enough, then that's where the problem is. And so I just put that pressure on myself before I go out cross country or show jumping. I think I don't want to make a mistake. So that's where the nerves come from fear of making a mistake, really. And obviously it does differ, the level of nerves over different levels, different scenarios, different horses. At a championship, I remember really clearly, again, at my first championship, I keep referring back to it because it was such a milestone for me, and I can remember it really clearly. I thought I would be horrendous in the start box at my first championship, because in all the trials before, because I wanted it so much, I wanted to be, I was like a quivering wreck. Like, all my trials, it was like beside myself, sick with nerves, terrified, like just felt, oh my God, I don't want to mess this up. But I had so much support around me at the championship that I was in that start box. I remember this complete feeling of focus, and I've never quite got close to it again before. But yeah, it was, I remember Caroline Moore, my coach, being there, and she was just talking to me. She was just saying, you've got 30 seconds now. And she was like, you're right, because she knows I get nervous. So I just was like, I'm absolutely fine. But I just knew I had a job to go and do. And the night before, I'd written down a lot of notes about the course and, and visualized everything. And that really helped me. So I think the support that you have around you at a championship, for me, almost helps more than if I'm doing a competition on my own. So that's that. Yeah, it does differ a lot. And obviously, if I do a lower level, I'm usually a bit better because there's obviously less on the line, but I can still be really nervous going around a baby's first 100 because I'm like, oh, I don't want to mess it up and give them a bad experience or whatever. So yeah.
So it's good for people to hear that you can be at the level that you're at, doing what you're doing, jumping understandably nerve-wracking jumps. I mean, and yet still be nervous. But the thing is, you wouldn't be at the level you're at now if you couldn't switch them off and focus on the game. So what is it that you do? You could be that nervous in the start box. What switches in your head that means that you then go and you get the job done? I mean, okay, occasionally you don't, like that's life, isn't it? But most of the time, you get the job done.
I think for me, again, it's that thing of not wanting to let the horse down. So the only thing that helps me, like they can be counting down from 5 and I'll still feel like I'm going to be sick. But as soon as I leave the start box, I'm like, that's it, I'm on it now. I've got to help this horse. There is no way that anything is getting in between me helping out my horse, telling them where they've got to go. Or it's not fair on them. They're excited, they want to go, they don't need me like gibbering about on top being like, oh my god, I'm really nervous. So my best thing that I can do for the horse is just to just go and be really positive and just get out there and just go for it, and then the horses respond to that. But I wouldn't say that I can cope with it very well until I'm out that start box and going. If I can be, like I say, in the warm up to the last minute being like, oh my god, I'm gonna be sick, I feel awful, this is terrible, why am I doing this? And then as soon as I go, then I'm all right. I just have to concentrate on my breathing and make sure I keep breathing.
So that sounds to me like something that we need to be looking at in one of our sessions, actually, because I wasn't aware of that at this point in time, actually. That so what that says to me is that there is a trigger in your brain that says, now I need to be on my game, I've got to look after this horse and I've got to hold its hand and tell it what to do. And if we can move that trigger back a bit further, that would be really handy. So we can do that. That's cool. Remind me in our next session.
Okay, that would be nice. I don't like feeling sick from the moment I wake up in the morning, especially if I've got cross country at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because I just feel exactly the same the whole day until I'm out the start box, and then afterwards I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, no, we can work on that. I actually genuinely, I don't think we'd ever even talked about it, to be honest.
I didn't
so many things.
I think I just said, oh, I get nervous, and then we did lots of other bits and bobs.
Because it is, isn't it, when we're coaching, it's whatever affects you that's most important at that point in time, isn't it? It's not, we can't always, unless, because you're a sponsored rider, it works slightly differently to anyone who's on a package. They get a set number of times that they contact me in a set number of things, whereas it's a bit more fluid with us, isn't it? So you kind of drop me a line and go, give me some help with this, and it's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and that's why it's so good for me as well, because I'm always so busy, and sometimes things can take me by surprise, and I'll suddenly be a bit worried about something that I hadn't even thought about, and I just used to be like, oh, and this is 2 days before the event, and if I can just drop you a line, I'll give you a call, and that's why it's invaluable, and that's what works really well for me.
So what would you say has worked really well for you having in your team? So in what way have I helped? In what way have your trainers helped? What's your team around you, and how do we all help you to achieve your best?
Well, I think the really good thing about the people I've got around me, like, so my mum, my trainer, yourself, although you guys don't necessarily meet up and get together and chat about it all, I relay everything that's been said. So I will talk to you obviously about my coaching, won't I? And if I'm I've done some coaching that was good, or done some that I felt I wasn't quite so good, or something that I was a bit worried about, and then then I'll go back and feed that back to Caroline, and then she helps me with it. And so it's just all about working together, really, because it doesn't really help if you're giving me all these brilliant things and I go and talk to someone else and they're like, oh, why are you doing that? Or they say completely the opposite. So everyone being on the same page has been what's been worked really well for me and being invaluable for me. So yeah, that's what I would say. It's sort of the teamwork that's the most valuable and really helps.
And it is interesting that, isn't it? Because we aren't a team in that we don't meet up. And I do work with some people that way, actually, interestingly enough. I will talk to their trainers and vice versa. But actually, you know, it definitely doesn't have to be that way. If you're open enough to help us be your team, then that's kind of, you know, you're in the middle managing us, really. That's how it needs to be, isn't it? For you to get the best out of what you need.
Yeah, 100%, because no one else knows what I need apart from me, really. And as you'll probably know, well, like I've just said now, you're like, oh, I didn't know that. So I can surprise people. And same with Caroline as well, same with my mum, and they're like, I never would have thought you would be worried about that or thinking about that. So it's just all about communication, really. And obviously sometimes, unfortunately, it does get to the point where you do have to get upset about something or stressed about something before you can deal with it. But, you know, it's all part of the journey, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, that's life. Like, I released an article only today that I input into for someone else, another mindset coach, about disappointment. And we both said that we might be experts in mindset, but it doesn't mean we don't get affected by this stuff. It just means that we're aware of it. We know what to ask ourselves. We could probably get ourselves out of it a bit quicker than some, because we're just aware of the tools and techniques to do it. And that's what it's about. It's about helping you and sharing those with you. It doesn't mean you're never going to feel down, upset, depressed, stressed, or any of that kind of thing. But it doesn't mean you're going to be bouncing off the flipping walls all the time and like super positive and probably actually really annoying.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So what would you say are some of the challenges that you've had to overcome to get to where you are today? Because, you know, so there is a perception sometimes that if you've been brought up by a mum who has done incredible things like she has and supported you the way she has, and you kind of grew up into this, that it must have therefore been easy for you because it's just been given to you on the plate. Now, we know that's absolutely not the case. So what are some of the things that you have had to overcome and deal with to get to where you are today?
I mentioned it briefly before about you know, getting to my first championship in 2016. It took me a long time because I did do ponies for 3 years, and there's obviously championships for ponies as well. Obviously, in my first year in ponies in 2012, I wasn't going to be in with a shot. I was on 2 ponies that maybe weren't quite suitable, and it was just an experience learning curve for me. But as I dipped my toe in it that year, I then realised, oh, you know, maybe I need a different caliber of pony, and maybe I really want to try and do this teams thing. And, you know, I watched the 2012 Europeans at Fontainebleau, and I remember watching thinking, oh, that's what I want to do. So we then got a pony that I think she'd done a few 90s, and then another pony is sort of slightly similar. And then, so I did have to, you know, produce those ponies really to get them up to sort of the standard that they needed to be in with a shot of being selected for a team, because these ponies are amazing. And so 2015, again, I would say probably I wasn't quite ready. Maybe I wasn't expecting to be longlisted. And then 2013, I'm getting my junior years mixed up, so pony year, second to last pony year was 2013. And then 2014, I kind of came out all guns blazing, and we did have quite a lot of top 3 placings in the trials. And, you know, I really thought I was in with a shot, and then I did a double clear and came 6th at the final trial. And obviously there are 6 people that are picked, and I think some of the ones in the top 6 were multiple riders. So it's sort of like, if you did it on that basis, it sort of looked very good. I mean, my pony was a bit difficult on the flat, but you know, I really hoped that sort of would have been it for me. So that was 2014, and I also had been trialing a horse for juniors at the same time, and that was the year when they took 12 to Bishop Burton for the juniors. And there was a little bit of discussion about, obviously I couldn't do both, and they were fairly interested in my junior horse, and I kind of said, well, ponies is my last year, I want to go for ponies. And then I ended up being reserved for ponies and not selected, and that it really did break my heart at the time. Which obviously, looking back now, it doesn't seem like such a big deal, and I've been to 3 championships, and, you know, brilliant. Like, I'd much rather have done these than that if I had to choose. But at the time, it felt like the end of the world, and it was really hard. And then obviously sold the ponies, and you are up against people who do buy really good experienced horses, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that sort of always felt like I was on the back foot a little bit. You know, I'd always be chasing to catch up, always sort of be like, oh, I finally got my horse a bit more improved. And then someone would come along, they bought another horse that had already won medals, already done things, and it would go in and do a beautiful dressage test. And there's mine, which I've like just about taught its shoulder in. And I'm thinking, oh God. So, you know, constantly felt like I was just fighting to keep my head above water and to try and compete with that level. And yeah, so then and then 2015, so my second to last year in juniors, I was longlisted for the junior team on my self-produced horse. I think he was only 8, and I didn't get selected again. And so I wasn't surprised. I remember the phone call, and I wasn't surprised. And I said, "Oh no, I completely understand that." And he was great. We had a long chat about why it was and what I could improve on, and that was brilliant because he was really open. But then I got off the phone, and I did feel a bit down, and I thought, oh God, I've got one more shot at this next year. It's my last year in juniors. If I don't do it now, I felt like I was never going to be able to do it, because there were other people my age who had been on 2 pony teams, 2 junior teams, were looking like they were set up to go on to some young rider teams as well. And there was me. I hadn't even got to a championship yet. And yeah, so then when I finally got to the one in 2016, I had sort of 3 horses that were like on the long list and could have gone. And I worked so hard to get them there, but I still didn't know. It was like I still felt like I was fighting tooth and nail to get to it. And I remember the phone call, getting it and saying that they wanted to take my horse. I just cried on the phone for ages. And poor Ginny, who one of the selectors, were just going, "You're all right, lovey. You're all right, lovey." I said, "I'm fine. I'm really happy." So I am quite an emotional person, but it honestly did feel like, all those years of just like heartache and hard work and literally just culminated in that one moment. So there's been a lot of things I've had to, disappointments I had to get through over the years. And I think, as you say, being now 22 and looking back and thinking that was like 5-6 years ago, everyone's like, "Oh, you've not had any disappointments, look at you with your medals, you've gone to 3 championships." And actually, it's not the case at all.
And so what do you think you've learned from that? Because I know you've definitely got a great mindset around, you think about something, you might be disappointed in the moment, you might be emotional in the moment about it or what have you, that's fine, we're all human. But then you've got a great mindset about, right, what do I need to learn from that? What do I need to do about that? And I think probably having Caroline as a trainer is really helpful in that as well. And probably the way that your mum is, I would think, is very useful in that kind of like, okay, the fail fast, get the feedback, like a bit of a mistake there or something not quite right, what am I going to do about it? And I know certainly the way you come to me and you say, "I've had this issue or I've had this problem, what do I need to do about it?" because you haven't got the answer at that point because it's in your brain or what have you, so what have you learned from those challenges, do you think, that have set you up to be the person that you are today?
Well, as I say, I am quite an emotional person, and I obviously would be upset after an initial disappointment. But then I'm the type of person that I'll let myself be upset for a day, and then if you see me the next day, I'm like, this is happening, and I don't care. This is going to happen. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get on the team. I'm going to have that feeling of coming through the finish, and I don't care. Like nothing's going to stop me. Like it almost is like over the top. Like I was so driven. And yeah, I might at the first I think, oh God, what's the point? That's really disappointing. But after that was just like, no, I'm going to show everyone. Like it's just that like stone hard, like just like I just get my head down and I just go, and I don't let anything stop me. So I've definitely learned that if you want something, you have to go and get it. And I think, coming out of Young Riders, that's something that I was a bit worried that I might lose, because obviously there's not a specific goal to work towards, like I'm going to go to that championship. So that's been a little bit of a shift in mindset that I've had to deal with and start thinking about. Obviously haven't been able to put it to practice quite as much because of the lockdown and no competing, but I just want to really make sure that I don't lose that, because looking back, I don't think there are that many people of that age. I mean, probably in eventing there are, because we're all crazy, but in the general population, I don't think there are many people with that much drive, and I think that is really important. I think that's why I've got where I am today. My mum is a complete grafter, and she's just taught me to be like that way. She was like, well, you just have to make it happen then. She's like, if you want to go there, if you want to get selected, you just have to be better than everyone else. And how are you going to do that? You have to work for it. So
wow, so you've got an incredible work ethic and a steely determination. And do you know what, if you look at any of the top riders, then they've got that. Sometimes it can be seen as selfish, but it's that single-minded, I'm having this and nothing's going to get in my way. And unfortunately that does mean sometimes you have to make sacrifices and things as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I made a lot when I was younger as well. you know, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, being horsey, and I was always the person that would, you know, miss out on the parties at school and things. With the eventing, it's slightly different because we all would really make the effort to see each other, so I can't deny that that I didn't see my eventing friends. But yes, at school certainly, like I made a lot of sacrifices with friendships and things like that, and I missed my leavers prom to go to Houghton for the championships. I missed another prom, I can't remember when it was or something. I missed something else. And there was just no question about it, and my friends at school used to always find it really odd, and they were like, but this is really important, why aren't you doing this? And I was like, well, it's not, because I've got a competition to go to, and if I don't do it, then, you know, I need to do it. So yeah, so they didn't really understand that. And just, yeah, a lot of people when they're younger, you know, they want to go out, live a life. I didn't. I just was like, well, no, I need to ride my horse. So yeah, a little bit sad, but then, you know, it all paid off. And yeah, as I get older, obviously I do want to have a little bit of a balance, but I have to appreciate that how I was when I was younger has got me to where I am now. So.
And so has any of that changed to where you are now? That sort of, or is that steely determination still 100% there?
I think it is still there, but as I say, it's hard because I haven't had a chance to put it to action this year yet. So you almost forget what it's like, because I can't be like, I'm going to go out to that competition, I'm going to try and go to that event and do really well, and I'm not going to let anyone else. So I'm like, oh, there's no events. So I'm certainly like still using it at home to train the horses, and I still do use it probably on a slightly lower scale every day at home with the horses, and think, you know, right, I'm going to, you know, even when you're not feeling like doing flat work or something or doing dressage, I think, no, I'm going to go and do it, because it might be that marginal gain that means that I do a better halt in a dressage test, and then I might come one place above, and that's how my brain works. So I do use it, even when I'm not realizing, probably.
Yeah, I think you do. and also that is perfect proof yet again with everyone that I have interviewed on these Q&As that have achieved incredible things, that steely determination, that they have got a goal, that it means that they get up every day and they get on with whatever they've got to do. And it might be that some days that's a day off because that's part of the plan, that's fine, but every day there's something that is helping them get towards that goal. It's not kind of thinking, oh, it'll come to me, it's I've got to make it happen.
Yeah, 100%.
So what would you say then you're doing during lockdown? So obviously there aren't events and things, so that's slightly different for you and for a lot of people, but you mentioned your training and stuff. What's changed for you as a result of lockdown, and how are you therefore keeping motivated? I mean, you kind of alluded to it, but what more is there?
So I sort of allowed myself to have a bit of a strange week, I think, when it was first announced and we knew there were no events, and that's something I got a lot better at since working with you. It's because before that would have been like, oh my god, I can't, you know, I need to keep going. And I was like, I'm going to allow myself some time just to process, because then I know that I'll come back actually with a better mindset on it all, rather than just feeling completely frazzled by week 3 and not knowing where I am or what I'm doing. So yeah, so then once I sort of got my head around it all a bit more, I have a weekly plan with the horses on a whiteboard that I write out every sort of Sunday beginning of the next week, and so I went through it and I just started making a plan, and we obviously said, right, take out the fast work, so none of the horses are doing any galloping or any fast work. For their hacking, they're still doing the same length hacks, but they're doing less trotting, just doing more walking, and it's more the older horses are doing more hacking, whereas the younger horses are perhaps doing a little bit more in the school, because this is for them, it's a time for them to learn a bit more, and for me to really give them as much of my time as I can, because I have got the extra time. A couple of horses have gone back home to owners for the time being, which makes sense, and actually at the time that feels a bit strange, and you think, oh god, that is, you know, how's that going to be, and actually, you know, everything has a silver lining. It means that I have a couple less horses to work, and I'm having more time to do other things, and the horses still have really good routine, and just the younger horses, they might be worked 5 days a week now rather than 6, because they don't need to worry about their fitness levels, because they've not got to go out and do a cross country course. And with the older horses, they might just swap what would have been a flat work or a jump session with a hack instead, because they do know their jobs obviously a little bit more. And then some of the younger horses have had their shoes taken off and they are being worked barefoot where they are, which ones are comfortable. And so no, we've got into quite a good little routine now, and now I'm almost thinking, oh my god, it's going to be weird not being in that. This is my little lockdown life, but I quite like it.
So that brings me on beautifully to my next question then, which is, okay, let's say hypothetically lockdown starts to ease from next week, which, you know, there's an awful lot of information out there of credible source which says that it's quite likely to happen. Now, we know that BE and the BEF are looking into what they can do to get competitions up and running, but we know it's not going to be anything quick. So with that in mind, what are your thoughts about how you're going to start coming out of lockdown? Because it's not going to be a sudden quick off to an event we go, is it? You know, I think some people think it might be, but I think most people in the know are,
I hope not,
realistic.
I don't even know where half my jods are.
Yeah, can you fit into them? That's the well, yeah, because you're still riding. It's all right.
So I think again, it just depends on the information, doesn't it? It depends what we are allowed to do. I think sort of the next step for me would be, if we're allowed to go out training a bit more, I probably will just have to take the horses, if we're allowed to go out on the lorry, obviously, and perhaps do a little bit more show jump schooling. I'm more thinking of the younger horses again, because the older horses don't really need to go out and practice skinnies or practice, you know, doing anything really specific. You know, maybe it might be good to, don't know, hire a dressage arena on grass somewhere else with the older horses. We might do bits and pieces like that. So still not necessarily the type of work and the type of fitness that we're thinking of and the type of preparation we're thinking about in the lead up to a big competition. But the younger horses, the one thing that they're missing out on, which they usually would be doing, is stuff like the cross country schooling and the show jump schooling away from home. Because obviously there's plenty we can do in my school, but they get used to that, and it's just good for them to go out and see the world a little bit more. So that would be probably our first step, and go from there, really. And like you say, just hopefully, if they are going to start getting things up and running again, we just have plenty of notice, not even in terms of getting the horses super fit, because my top ones probably could pop around an OI tomorrow if they really had to, you know, or in a couple of weeks, maybe they are a bit fat. And yeah, so they could do that, but it's not really, it's just the preparation in terms of mindset and little things like, you know, getting all the tack and the stuff ready, and planning as well the season, because why would I go out and jump around and know like, where am I going, you know? So I haven't really at the moment got any sort of thing that I am aiming for, because I don't know anything about the time frames. And even if they start eventing in end of August or maybe in September or whatever it's going to be, that doesn't necessarily mean that, oh well, because the 5-star in France is in October, you'll be going to that, right? I'm thinking, well, not necessarily, because that will only leave me 2 events before then, probably a hell of a lot of fitness work to do. And for that sort of level, you can't really go to that off just sort of one or 2 runs. So especially not for me anyway, I'm not experienced enough. So that'll be interesting to see how that pans out. I think for the lower levels and for the young horses, it's slightly different. They probably could go and pop around, you know, a 90, 100 and not exert themselves too much, and get a few in at the end of the year if that were the case. But with the older horses, it's going to be quite difficult to work out sort of what we can get them to. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah, it is all very play it by ear at the moment, isn't it? But it's interesting to hear about your plan, and actually the ones that you could take out that might be all right, and the ones that you've got to consider a bit more, and having that kind of real sense of which horses need what, isn't it? It's really knowing them. And yeah. So we've had one question come in. We had another question come in, which was about dealing with nerves at the top level. But I think you already answered that before she gave it to us, which is at the moment you don't. You just get on with it.
Sorry.
That's all right. We'll get to that one on another Q&A maybe. I mean, okay. So just quickly, like, you do deal with them, because you don't collapse. You do what you do, and you do it very well. So what is it that you would say you do to deal with nerves your way at the moment? We'll come up with a better one. It's fine.
So I would just say that if all else fails and you know you're feeling terrible, you're feeling sick and you're feeling nervous, I would just say, out of everything else, who needs you most right now is your horse. It's not about you. It doesn't matter how rubbish you're feeling. You need to be there for your horse, because it's not fair on them. And that's not to put more pressure on you and for you to panic more, but for me, that personally makes me think, right, yeah, it's not that I've got to get on with this because my horse doesn't know what's coming. I've walked the course, he hasn't, and I need to be on it. And it's not fair for me to be thinking, oh, I'm feeling a bit worried about this. I've put them in a position where I've taken them to an event. I've done the entry. I'm saying, yeah, let's go and do this. I think you're ready. So therefore, I've got to damn well get on and ride them. And so that's how I kind of shake myself out of it a bit.
Cool, I love that. And that's what we call a perspective. So there's all these different perspectives you can have, and you take it from the perspective of your horse. So you go, yeah, well, they need me. I'm going to have to be there for them. Like, they can't 100%. Do this on their own. It'd be lovely if they could, wouldn't it? I think there's some that think they can. Okay, so another question for you then. This has come from Evelyn, from Louise Powell. Presumably you know Evelyn. Yes, so the best Cool. Okay, so the best anti-rushing exercises, please, that are suitable for lockdown. So you might want to give us a bit of background as to the type of person you'll be giving this one to, because we don't know who Evelyn and Louise are. So she's asking for the best anti-rushing exercises, which does sound a good idea, actually, to be honest.
Yeah, so Evelyn I teach as part of East Sussex Pony Club, and Evelyn comes along to the mini show jumpings, and Evelyn bought her quite buzzy little mare last time, so I'm assuming that's who we're referring to. So I would definitely say for that, try some poles on the ground, try some grids, try some bounces. So that means that everything can be kept really small, doesn't need to be too difficult. And I would also say try practicing making a walk transition or a halt after you jump a fence, so that your pony learns that it doesn't land and just run off with you. And then once they start landing and coming back to you, hopefully you'll be able to keep a rhythm and continue doing it and sort of take out the transitions as you go. But try the poles, just even if it's just pole, one stride, jump, one stride, pole, or bounce, one stride, jump, and then make your walk transition. Doesn't need to be bigger than, cross poles. So try that, and then when we can get back to teaching, we'll have a look when you next come over.
Cool. Okay, Evelyn, so that's your homework to go off and do now, Louise. You can give her that. Okay, another one that's come in. What was the hardest step up from ponies to horses?
So what I'm guessing they mean sort of what part of it. For me, it was the stride difference. So I was quite lucky that I, as I mentioned before, overlapped. So I was riding a horse and eventing a horse from aged 14 onwards, and I was continuing with ponies until I was 16. So when I was 16, I'd be riding 2 ponies in a pony trial, and then I'd have another horse doing the intermediate and the junior trial. And so that was fairly tricky. If you're on a pony and you're jumping around a novice cross country course, it's not pony distances, so they do sometimes find it a bit long and have to chip in. And then I'd go and get on my horse and have to ride around in an intermediate, and I'd think, oh God, no, my horse is meant to make these strides and meant to make these distances. And so when I walk the course, I just had to be really careful with that, and make a point of it in my head and think I'm not riding a pony. And Caroline Moore has told me this for many years, you're not riding ponies anymore. She has to say that to a lot of her pupils, I think, that she teaches. But I would say if you are on ponies and looking to make that transition to horses, if you feel that it won't overwhelm you and confuse you too much, I would actually encourage an overlap, because you get a little bit of a head start. And I actually think it would, from what I've heard from my friends who have ridden ponies, sold the pony, bought a horse, and then hopped on the horse, that's actually been quite difficult for them. Whereas I found the chop change transition, although it was a bit tricky at times, it helped me in the long run.
Cool, thank you very much. I think you've primed your pony clubs that you coach, because we've got another question in here from Nettie. I presume you know Nettie.
Yeah.
So the best exercise to help a horse who jumps fences to one side. Oh yeah, I need this one.
So yes, I know the horse that Nettie's referring to, and he does like to do that, and he likes to jump out very far as well. So Nettie, we need to get you some guide poles, some V poles. So if he jumps to the right, then a V pole on the fence on the right hand side. If he continues to do it with the V pole, move the pole up a bit. So I'm trying to show you. So the pole's on the on it like this. If he's still doing it, move it up a bit, so it's sort of, and moved over as well, so it pushes him out to the left a bit more if he's drifting right. I can't actually remember which way he drifts. And what you could also try is a pole on the ground on the other side of the fence. So as you jump the fence, you've got the fence here, put a pole on the landing side, sort of there, so that when he jumps and he wants to go right, he's got a pole there. And you'd be amazed at how good they are actually at figuring that out. You'll feel like he's going to jump on top of the pole, but they don't often do that. I've been using that at home, and that's actually really helped. So yeah, try the guide pole leaning on the fence, and also try one flat on the ground parallel as well.
Cool, that's really awesome. I think in my case, it's straighten yourself up so you're not pushing him to the right all the time as well, I think.
That is also a good point. Yes, exactly. Make sure you're sitting straight, Nettie.
Okay, another question in. It's like quick fire questions now. I'm loving this. Okay. Well, presumably this is when you're not in lockdown, because you've already said you don't do the gallop stuff at the moment, but what kind of fast training do you do? And do you do it on a gallop track or just in some grass fields?
Yes, that's a really good question. I actually alternate it. So if for top level, usually we do fitness work with the horses every 4th day. We're talking for 5-star top level. Sometimes if it's a lower level, maybe intermediates, it might be every 5th day. Just depends on the horse as well. So what I would do is on the 5th day, I would take them up the gallops. I use Breitling gallops, so anyone in East Sussex, I recommend them because they are vertical. So they are, they don't allow the horse to go too far, so it reduces the risk of injury on their legs, because if you've got a gallop that's a bit more of a flat line with not much of a gradient, it's likely that your horse is just going to take off with you. Whereas if it's a higher gradient, they can't go so fast, and it's better for their legs. So that's the gallops we use. Usually go up them 2-3 times probably for the top level, and probably 2 times sort of intermediate. So on the 5th day we do gallops and do that. Then on the 10th day I would then go into our fields at home. I'd take my stopwatch and I do either continuous or interval training. So I might do the top horses, it might be 4 lots of 6 minutes, just sort of steady cantering up to the bridle, and give them 2-minute breaks in between. Again, that varies. It can be 3 lots of 3 minutes. It can be 3 lots of 4 minutes. It all depends on the horse and the level. And then on the 15th day, I would go back to the gallops again. So that's how I like to do it. So just so that they don't get crazy with going in a straight line flat out, I think it's really important to use fields and grass as well if you can, if you've got good ground, so that even with a little bit of an undulation, if the ground's good, that's actually really good for them, because it makes you practice gear changing. So especially if you've got a strong horse like I have, he then doesn't just learn to go straight line fast as he can. He actually has to listen to me. We have to go up, we have to go down, we have to gear change, and so it's fitness, but it's also discipline for him. So that's what I do with my horses.
Okay, and a follow-on question from that then is, if you've got a gallop with an incline in it, how do you introduce that incline to a horse that's maybe a little unfit, or isn't at the peak and is competing down at the real lower levels as well?
Yeah, so that's also a good question, and it's really important because if you're newer to the sport, or like you say, moving up the levels, or only just starting your canter work, I think a lot of the perception is, oh, I'm at the gallops, I need to gallop flat out up this slope once, twice, 3 times, whatever you've been told or think you should do. But we often trot up them first time, especially with young horses, and often that's enough. If the gradient's enough, like at Brighton, if you trot up those gallops once and you're on a baby, that would probably be more than enough for them. Something I sometimes do, if I don't want them to go up 3 times, but I think they need to have just a little bit more of a pipe opener, I'll just go halfway down and turn back around and go up just halfway. And it's just important not to overdo it, because at the time the adrenaline runs with the horses as well. So they'll gallop up there flat out, they'll puff and they'll cool down, and then they'll be like ready to go again. You think, oh, I'll go up 3 more times, and actually that's just the adrenaline. So don't be fooled at how hard they are working, and try not to overdo it too much, because you probably would be surprised at just how fit it does get them, depending on the horse.
And so how often would you incorporate that into your work if it was on site, for instance, so you could get to it super easily?
Well, I suppose if you were hacking, you could incorporate like your trotting for your hack. Maybe you would then trot up the gallops once in as part of your hack. And then, at another part, you might do your 1 canter session a week. Again, depends on the horse. Probably if you're at probably if you're at 100 to novice level, you probably would only need to sort of do canter work once a week or once every 6 days, and then you might, but it just depends on the length and the incline, but you might want to go up that once or twice. But yeah, this, like you say, you don't always have to gallop flat out up a gallop. Even if you walk up it, if it's a really steep incline, you walk your horse up the gallop 3 times, that would be really hard work for them. So you could just use it as like a slightly more gym session of a hack, and put it in that way.
Cool. So you don't really have to do very much then to start getting them fit in that respect at all. I mean, I think some people think you've got to hammer them around all the time, but once a week, every other week, something like that is enough.
Yeah. I've been really brought up on the fact that you don't necessarily need to hammer them. It's actually, fitness wise, a lot of people forget that actually walking and trotting does aid fitness a lot. I mean, my mum competed when there were roads and tracks, so if anyone knows about getting a horse fit, it would be her. And actually she's quite she doesn't really like the gallops that much because she thinks it just gets them sort of a crazy fit. Some horses that's good, some do need to really get their adrenaline up and go for it, some don't so much. So I would just say that also, if you're schooling, there's no reason why, like with my youngsters, they won't start going up the gallops until they are doing a new format 2-star probably, because I can do most of their fitness work in the school, just cantering around. Even if you have a schooling session, you think, oh, I'm going to do make sure 20 minutes of my schooling session is cantering, be surprised, it does get them fit just schooling them. So don't think that, oh my goodness, I'm going eventing, I need to do gallop work. No, you don't need it.
Super. Okay. Nettie said thank you very much as well, by the way. I think that was to the jumping left thing, wasn't it?
You're welcome, Nettie.
She says she'll let you know how it goes. Okay, so really, really quick one. I've got 2 questions left for you. So how do you cope with the hard ground at competitions at the height that you do?
Okay, really interesting. So obviously we do have grounds work that's taking place at events. So they water it, they spike it, they aerate it, so sort of spikes it and then pulls the ground up a bit, I think. And obviously then they water it as well. So there's a lot of work that goes in to these events to get the ground good, because as we all know, and as the events that are due to run sort of May, June, July, August, they're going to be the events that have to work the hardest on their ground, because competitors won't run their horses otherwise. So I often choose my events on, you know, my knowledge of past of when I've been there in the past and what the ground's usually like. And then I'll get there and I'll walk the course, and you know, sometimes they do all they can to the ground and it's still just fern, just because we've had, you know, crazy hot weather or whatever it might be, and depending on what the horses are doing next, and where they are in their season plan, I might decide not to run them cross country. I might decide just to show jump them, because obviously it's you know, a minute and a half, and jumping, you know, fences on flat ground, no drop fences, all that sort of thing. Whereas cross country is obviously a lot more strenuous with all the drops, and just depends on the horse as well. I've got a couple of horses that we put pads on their front feet, just literally as a precaution when it comes to the summer. It doesn't necessarily mean that it prevents them from going lame or anything. They're just more comfortable. They just seem to perform better with it. So that's always something that we consider if I feel like a horse is perhaps struggling in that time of year. But yeah, it's just about knowing your horse really, and thinking, you know, oh, my horse likes wet ground, you know, perhaps you might give him a mini summer break rather than give him the whole winter off, and just pick your events carefully, and just think about the longevity of the horse and think, well, perhaps maybe you don't need that run that day if the ground isn't quite how you think it should be for your horse. So
cool. And I think what's lovely to hear is that your ethos, your training methodology, who you have around you and everything is very much based on what we know is very important to you, which is your horse's welfare. Like, everything is always for you. It's always the horse, isn't it? Even how you deal with nerves, you deal with it by thinking, I've got to help my horse. It's about my horse. Everything's about my horse. And I think it's lovely to hear that actually, even with a real competitive drive and, you know, wanting to achieve things, it's about, ultimately, it's always about your horse, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And obviously I have been brought up on that as well, but I would say I'm even more pro it. Like, I can get a little bit the other way with it, as I've obviously spoken to you about before. And I almost get so worried about my horse because I just obviously have such a partnership with them, and really have what I feel is a deep connection with them. And I would, I just feel like I'd never forgive myself if something happened to them because of something that I did. So that's what makes me strive to be as good as I can, because then I know that I can, if I've just got that extra bit of knowledge and I can just pull the rein a little bit that way, use a bit of leg that way, I might be able to make it easier for my horse. And that is just what it's all about for me. And all of my horses they are like pets. I shouldn't say that as a professional, but no, I do just adore all of them.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Felicity. It's been absolutely fascinating. And thank you to everyone that's asked some questions. I think the Pony Club came out in force for you. So if anyone wants to get hold of you or ask you any more questions, obviously, if you're listening to the replay or you're watching this on the replay, you can put the question into the replay. If you listen to this on the podcast, how can they get hold of you if they want to ask you a question, or maybe book you for a clinic when we're allowed, or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm fairly active on Facebook. So my page is Felicity Collins Eventing. And then I've got an Instagram account, which is the same, Felicity_Collins_Eventing. And those are probably the two main platforms that you can get hold of me on. And also I've got my website, which is www.felicitycollins.co.uk. So very easy to remember.
Yeah, sure. And outside of lockdown, you do also coach, don't you? You help out different pony clubs. You're based down in East Sussex, is that right?
Yeah.
And so and you've got a couple of livery spaces, I understand, for when we're allowed out of this, is that right?
Well, actually they've already been filled, so they're on
that was quick.
Yeah, so they're are actually full up on DIYs, but I've always got sort of space for schooling and competition liveries and things like that. But yeah, and lots of coaching as well. And I'm sure as soon as we're able to do that again, I'll be having my diary open and getting back into it all.
Cool. Well, thank you ever so much, Felicity. It's been lovely listening to you, and hopefully a lot of people have realised that doesn't matter what level you're at, it's all the same stuff going on, isn't it?
Oh, definitely, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Take care. See ya.
Bye.